for loss negotiations. June 22nd. This time, we're gonna
Forgot my hair.
lead off with,
Okay.
Ms. Gonzalez giving an overview of the, loss percentage allocation
this-
revenues. At which point we'll, let each of the cities present their statement of position, their request. We'll follow up with ours, and then, this will give us an opportunity for everybody to see what everybody's looking to do and looking to be and looking to get. And we can all take home everybody's presentations and digest. We'll meet again and get at it more earnestly. Everybody with me? All right, good. All right, Ms. Gonzalez, if you'll, lead off.
Okay, good afternoon. This is going to be a real brief overview of the actuals for loss to date. There's also a paper copy. I know St. Mary's, you're facing this way, but there is a paper copy if you just want to look at that of the presentation. But from 2013, and I've projected through the end of 2022, we have collected almost $82 million. And over the course of that 10 years, the loss has increased each year 76%. So that's pretty significant over that 10-year period. Probably in the last couple years, I know with 2020, I was expecting a big change in loss to actually go down with COVID, and instead spending went crazy in Camden County, so it went up. So between that, inflation, the marketplace facilitator, we're ending up that this year we're going to have probably more than 12 million in collections for 2022. And this chart just shows what each of the cities and the counties have collected to date. The county projected through December is just over 38 million. Kingsland, almost 20 million. City of St. Mary's, almost 22 million. And City of Woodbine, 2.4 million. And this last slide just shows where we are currently on the loss distributions. The county's at 46%, but in 2013, it did start at 49%. 2014, it went down to 48%, then 47%, and in the fourth year of loss, it landed at 46%. So that's where we are now. Calendar year 2021, this is an actual collection of 10.5 million. The county received 4.8 million, and the cities combined was 5.7. And on the far right, you'll see a list of the state mandated services and functions and offices that the county pays for. And at the bottom, we've got other government services and support. So included there are things like HR, IT, because all of those departments and offices support the courts and the jail and the sheriff's office. So we added that in, and what we took out of that was any non-tax revenue. So we landed at 21 million. And what that comes to be, if you compare that to what the county had received, the 4.8 million, we were covered for about 23% of the countywide services. And I have excluded a couple of departments from that, from the other government services and supports. That would be special appropriations, our planning and development, code enforcement, and also CRS erosion sediment. So those are not included in those numbers. And that's really what I've got as an overview. So I'll hand it back to the chairman.
Obviously, that's kind of a 5,000-foot flyover, just to kind of assuming everybody's got similar numbers. Y'all know what you collected, what you do with it. And this time we'll start off with folks making their statement of positions or proposals, or if they have one or not, whatever. Ethan?
Certainly.
Y'all have, if you have any handouts for everybody, that would be
Well, what I have is here, I don't have a handout for everyone, but I have a letter that was sent to the county, copy for each commissioner. Someone can grab that stack on the way by. I'll state for the record, please accept this letter. This was sent on June 2nd, 2022. As notice of the city of Kingsland's full support for distributing lost proceeds to each qualified government based on most recent census population numbers. This method of distribution has proved to be the most efficient, for the projects including funding Public Service Authority, Keith Dixon Way Construction Project for access to Coastal Pines Technical College, and most recently for providing the additional joint funding for the new Camden County Health Department. I was not made aware until the letter I received this afternoon from the county that we were having an expectation to provide a presentation on our standalone, but this letter stands in that place. This was sent again June 2nd to the county.
So in summary, what is it you're saying exactly?
Distribution based on population.
Okay. All right. St. Mary's, do y'all have one? All right.
Like to start out with a little bit of story about how we communicate, if I could. And everybody hear me? So, great. Thank you for the letter from the county. It's dated June 8th. This is the snail mail version, but I think the cities and the county need to be aware of this situation. This letter didn't show up in the mayor's office until last night, yesterday afternoon, and I think Mayor Day has told me it just showed up in his office this morning. So that's 2 weeks for snail mail. And it clearly makes evident, I know this was an email also, but it just shows that we can no longer rely on this for communication. I just want to express now to everyone that we can't rely on this. And I know it seems like a segue, but it can cause a lot of consternation when you're not aware of it, or it comes late and something else comes in between. So I think we've got to make sure we rely on our electronic mail with this is only backup from now on, as far as I'm concerned, so that we don't end up with total miscommunication and go down a path that doesn't necessarily need to happen because we've crossed paths. And I think it's critical. Whether or not the postmaster can fix this, yeah. But I have heard from my staff, Marcia, right?
Yes,
You want to confirm that we've had this same issue?
yes, sir.
So, and it deals with the operations of the city when you're talking about people and their tax bills or their water bills, everything. So just be aware of it. I think everybody needs to know that what we used to rely on is no longer reliable the way we're.
I think going forward, Mayor, we can just all agree that, whatever the county's sending out, we'll send the same to everybody, doing a group email. And, we'll make sure everybody here at the table gets those same emails and same information. And we may also follow it up with a hard copy, but we'll do an email at that point in time. So we'll rely first on email just to.
Good, okay.
Chairman,
And so
we
thank
actually
you
did-
for letting me have the segue. I
Some
think it's
stuff.
important to the public also.
Yeah.
So from the city of St. Mary's standpoint, where we are right now, is we need to really understand the philosophy of supporting the constitutional requirements with lost money. And I think before we would be able to move forward with anything that would present with the county having more of a percent than the population distribution allows, we really need to understand that philosophy, because in my understanding, something on the order of 90% of all the negotiations rely on straight population distribution only throughout the state of Georgia. And it may muddy the understanding of the public about what it costs for functions. And obviously it then turns to however you do it, through other kinds of collections or millage rate. But the fact that this funding is mixed is as something that I don't know that we can immediately accept. And so we really need a strong argument about why we should mix the two in a loss for the county.
Mix the two.
Combination of the population, but also a constitutional allowance for
I just want to be
county
sure I'm
services.
Who you were
Yeah.
clarifying. All right, Mayor, appreciate it. Does the city of Woodbine have any? I mean, I realize, you know, as the mayor acknowledged, the emails went out. When did the emails go out? The letter that you're referring
Oh,
to?
yeah, we got that.
June 8th. Obviously, we can't control the mail either. But, you know, they all did go out on June the 8th. And, so, like I said, henceforth, we'll try to stick with we'll keep doing both, but to get it in a more timely manner, we'll certainly start off with email and hard copies. So Woodbine, do you have any comments at this point in time?
We just want, it to be considered that we are the county seat. Tax on us to accommodate all of the water systems for Woodbine that is coming through all the county buildings that we do not get any money for. So we're just asking for that to be considered, along with our request that we've already sent.
All right. And like I said, I didn't know whether each of you had gone through and had a chance to work this thing out. We have, you know, obviously we've been somewhat preparing for it. And we've hired our consultant here and helping us work through that. And, I believe at this point in time, we're gonna give you an overview, and this will kick off, you know, sorry. This will give you an overview of where we are, and he'll get into some of the questions that you were referring to about the constitutionality and the legalities and. So let's, you know, you can stand in, you can walk around. Makes you feel comfortable, to be on the screen.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Klein. My name is Phil Sutton. I've been a city and county manager for the last 35 years. And I've done loss consulting the last 10 years ago, and I'm doing it again this time around. Pull it down.
If you're gonna walk around, you're away.
There we go.
Right.
Down.
Down makes it the next.
I want to sort of refresh everybody's memory because this renegotiation only occurs once every 10 years. And so we all get a little rusty with it.
But I want to interject one thing. How many here have been through this 10 years ago? Besides me? Lee and Grayson? Okay, so.
So some of,
You went through it 10 years ago, didn't you? Wasn't he on council?
I think he said he just came in. He was asking if you had been through this 10 years ago.
I forgot my hearing aids, I'll admit it. I'm sorry, everybody. So, and I don't do sign language. Bill, what-
Have you done this, what you involved in the negotiations 10 years ago?
I was peripherally involved. I attended one or two of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just
but it
didn't know.
was,
Saw some of it.
Yeah, I've had some experience with it, yes.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry.
so we're required to renegotiate this once every 10 years. And within 2 years after the census comes out, December 30th, 2022, all the cities and counties in the state of Georgia that impose the sales and use tax are required to have a new distribution certificate submitted to the Revenue Department. One of the things that the law says very predominantly and several times in the law is that population is not to be considered the sole criteria. Government services are not always a direct correlation with population. And back in 1995, 94, this came out, 95, all the cities and counties who issued lost, that imposed lost, were required to renegotiate based on the 8 criteria listed in the legislation. And these 8 criteria are not the only things you can consider. You can consider the 4 corners of the law. The challenge is how to quantify each of the jurisdiction's service delivery responsibilities in a simple percentage distribution. But that's our job. That's what we have to do. Now that the negotiations have started, we have 60 days to go through this negotiation process. If an agreement is not reached through this open negotiation process, then the city and county can hire a mediator and go into a non-binding mediation process. The law requires that the distribution of loss be based on service delivery responsibilities. It says that about 5 times in the 8 criteria. And the funding requirements of the services funded by lost are to be considered. The services funded are general fund services. And the money that's considered part of the lost discussion is property tax along with the sales tax, because lost has one purpose. The purpose is to provide a sales tax rollback, property tax rollback based on the amount of sales tax each jurisdiction receives. Then, of course, you can use that to fund general services, in your general service budget. And there's no one method there's no specific measurement method that's described in the law, except, as I said, the use of population as the only criteria or the most heavily weighted criteria is not allowed under the law. The law also brings up some fairly sensitive, controversial issues that cities and counties have dealt with for many years. Point of sale, for one, tax equity for another, are specifically listed. Point of sales in criteria 5, tax equity is in criteria number 7. So our approach is to look at the law carefully. It's a long and complicated law, and identify measurements that can be quantified objectively and are shared between cities and counties, so that both cities and counties can measure population, their general fund budget, the tax equity scenarios, daytime population. So we're going to use those types of measurements. And we've prepared a report in this presentation for your consideration in order to prepare for the negotiations. General property tax rollback, as I said, is the main reason for having local option sales tax. And so the question is, how are we doing? If the main purpose is to roll back property taxes on the residents of the county government and who receive services from the county government and the cities, Camden County's gross millage, which has to be reported to the Revenue Department every year, the gross millage rate is 18.7 mils, round numbers. The amount of millage reduction Camden County is able to generate based on the loss collections is 3 mils. So they're able to reduce their gross millage rate down to a billable millage rate of 15.5 mils. So there's a 16.8% reduction in the millage rate for county taxpayers. The cities, you'll see Kingsland, there's a 38% reduction in millage rate because of they're able to reduce their 11.9 gross mill down to 7.4 mil. St. Mary's has about a 39.4 millage rate reduction, and if you look at it from a percentage basis. And Woodbine, it's hard to see on that screen, it's about 79% reduction in millage rate. I want to make one important point that when loss discussions were occurring back in 2012, the Attorney General's office was asked for an opinion about the use of countywide population first. And the Assistant Attorney General rendered the opinion that the Attorney General's office confirmed that in loss negotiations, the second criteria, which refers to population, is referring to the service delivery responsibilities of the county's entire population. That's not just the unincorporated population. And she went on to cite a case called the Bulwitz. I don't say that very well. It was a case with Chatham County where the Supreme Court held that the special district that is created by the local option sales tax statute is the entire county, including all the municipalities, and the county is required to roll back taxes because of this case countywide, not simply in the unincorporated area. Now, there was further discussion between a group of attorneys and the Attorney General's office. Later, they sent another letter on August 21st. Attorney General's office responded on October 3rd and said that based on statutes, case law discussed in that letter, I agree with you that our analysis of paragraph 2 applies equally to paragraphs 1 and 3 of the Georgia Code. And the statute contemplates that the service delivery responsibilities of the entire county should be considered. Again, this is to reinforce the fact that the county is simply not the unincorporated area. Okay, again, countywide service and tax rollback. The purpose for loss is to roll back taxes for all of the cities that issue loss and for the county to roll back taxes for all the property owners within the unincorporated and incorporated portions of the county. Of course, the county provides many state mandated services, which Nancy talked about earlier. And I think we want to emphasize the fact that there's a concept of uniformity and equal treatment when it comes to taxes. The Supreme Court of Georgia held that uniformity and equal treatment under the law is required for loss. Specifically, there were several cases on this point. To account for the uniformity of tax treatment across the county and the 3 cities, and to ensure equal impact of sales tax collections as required under the case law, the proportion of tax relief derived through sales tax should be the same proportion for all jurisdictions in terms of realizing the property tax relief. So that's a long sentence. In other words, the proportional rollback of sales tax against the property taxes levied should be the same. Well, how are we doing in that regard? Well, this is why I want to walk around and show you that if you look at the top chart, if you were to, and this is just an example. Of course, I said population cannot be used as the sole criteria. And we're going to use a lot of other criteria. But if, in fact, population was the only criteria, and you were to distribute sales tax based on the unincorporated population in Camden County, you would see that that distribution would be about 3.3 million. And because you'd be dividing the unincorporated, using the unincorporated area to determine that tax, the proportional share.
Hey, Phil, just to interrupt you for a second, being that you're gonna point at it, there's a pointer on that.
Yeah. The rub button,
Right.
there you go.
Okay, great, thank you.
That way everybody can see what numbers you're
I
referring
want to
to.
focus on this number, the per capita tax rollback. When I just said that the law says that we're supposed to have uniformity in treatment of the taxpayers, how are we uniformly treating the, the county taxpayer? If we distribute the $10.3 million, which is the amount of sales tax we had in the last calendar year, based on unincorporated population and the population of the cities, you would end up with a per capita rollback of about $60 per resident, because you have to, the county has to roll back taxes on the entire 54,768 residents, not just the 17,000 residents. And so we can't use the 17,000 as the important factor to determine the percentage distribution, when in fact, the rollback has to be that the county issues with this 3.3 million that it would get, would only, has to be divided among these 54,000 people. And their per capita benefit to the county residents is only $60, where it's almost 3 times as much for the city residents. So in order to make the population distribution fair and uniform, you need to take the distribution based on the full county population, and then you can divide full county population into the share of revenue, and the per capita rollback is equal. It's $114 per person for each jurisdiction. So this is the reason that we think it's so incredibly important that we not consider the county as simply the unincorporated area. It has to be considered as the entire county. Now, just to sort of cut to the chase, the county's position is that we should analyze these criteria. The 8 criteria plus there's the overarching purpose of loss is states in the law that we're going to analyze the service delivery responsibilities and the resources available under the law. So our first measure is how much is collected in property tax and lost revenue. That's the revenue to be considered, and you can see that share based on that quantitative measure. The second criteria, I'll go over these in a little bit in more depth in just a second. Second criteria talks about the central business district. We're using daytime population. You see that how that spreads itself out between the county and the 3 cities. The second criteria is residential population. We're using residential population, again, from a county-wide perspective. Criteria number 3 talks about the existing service delivery responsibilities of each government, and we're using general fund expenses in each case. Criteria number 4 talks about the effect of the change in laws on your ability to fund debt. I take a little broader view of that. I think that when these cases have gone to court, oftentimes the judge wants an explanation of why you're deviating from past practice. And so the past practice is something to be considered. And as in the case of Camden County and your cities, when change occurred 10 years ago, the change was made over a period of time. So you recognize that predecessors recognize that issue. Point number 5 is point of sales. We're going to use a combination of countywide commercial and industrial digest along with U.S. Census data, and we compare that, cross-reference that with the commodities report from the Revenue Department. And you can see how that distribution splits itself out. The 8th criteria is service delivery and funding strategies of the governments. And there we, again, look at the service delivery responsibilities of the governments being measured by the general fund expenses times an index of the population served. And there you have that. Is there a way we can move that slide up? showing the very bottom of it. Okay, you have a copy of the PowerPoint. You can see that the total proposed distribution for the county is 58.1%, Woodbine 1.4, St. Mary's 20.8, Kingsland 19.69. Okay, so the first, I'll go through this in a little bit more details so that you can, I think, get a better appreciation for the numbers that we're dealing with. And this is the overarching principle. The purpose of loss is to analyze service delivery responsibilities of government, analyze the existing allocation of the proceeds available under the law, which are two things, lost and property tax, and then allocate those resources on that basis. And so we think one important criteria to consider, or one important measure to consider is how much property tax and loss revenue is used to fund the general services of each government. See that percentage breakdown there. Okay, central criteria, number one in the law, talks about the central business district. Specifically, it says the service delivery responsibilities to the population served during normal business hours, conventions, trade shows, athletic events, the inherent value to the community of the central business district and the unincorporated area. And then in this case, we think that it's important to look at employment along with the residential population. And the Census Bureau, this is the Census Bureau's formula for determining daytime population. Take the residential population for each jurisdiction, plus the employment, minus the workers living in the area. And that the net result gives you the daytime population. This is a picture that gives you sort of a graphic depiction of employment and what effect it has on daytime population. So you
Mr.
just,
Sutton, with all due respect, I apologize for interrupting. It's got us down at saying that we've got 472 residents within the city limits that work here. Are they certain that they are counting the entirety of Woodbine, which would include unincorporated county?
unincorporated county is not part of Woodbine. Woodbine is the city limits.
Yes, sir, I
of
understand
Woodbine
that. I'm just saying,
specifically.
I don't believe that there are 472 people that work in the county that live in the city of Woodbine, myself being one included.
These are workers that are actually of working age and are working and are working in jobs that, and this is the census number, the way the census looks at workers is, it is those that receive unemployment compensation. So if you don't receive unemployment, or not eligible to receive unemployment compensation, so you're an employer of one, like me, I don't show up in these numbers as being employed.
It's not city workers that are working in the county, it's city workers.
It's city
what it comes down to.
city workers.
It's
themselves.
people in Woodbine,
6% last
Work.
time to get, they want 60
Period.
this time.
Okay, so it's not
I'm
just
trying to figure out
within, it's
how do
not.
no,
numbers
it's
that are
not
within-
residents of Woodbine working for the county.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. So this shows that there's about 4,651 people come from outside Camden County to work every day. There's about 6,872 that live in Camden County and work in Camden County. And about 10,000 leave Camden County to work somewhere else. Again, this is those types of jobs that are eligible for unemployment compensation. So they don't count sole proprietors.
It's just people who report to the Department of Labor, unemployment tax, who are being paid unemployment tax on, which is in general, everybody gets a W-2.
Exactly.
If you're a sole proprietorship, you're paying Social Security, Medicare, but you're not paying unemployment tax. unless you're generating a W-2 for yourself.
And that's the way the Census Bureau uh, deals with employment. It's very consistent. It's done nationwide this way. Kingsland, there's 3,000 coming in every day to work and about 4,400 going out every day to work somewhere else. St. Mary's, similar situation, about 3,100 come in to St. Mary's and about 4,883 goes out to work. That just gives you a visual depiction of how daytime population is calculated.
And where's the Woodbine data?
I don't have a picture of that, but the data is right there. It's just showing illustration. You have 784 people employed, and there's 472 that are workers living in the area. So you have a net benefit. So you have more employees. You're the only city that has more employees coming in every day than going out to work. I can show you a picture of the graphic if you, if that helps.
These are all
you.
Department of Labor.
That's all Census Bureau data. Okay, residential population, the residents pay taxes, should benefit from taxes. It's an important consideration, but it's not the sole consideration. The residential population does certainly create a primary and costly demand on services. I think probably the most important, I've done this many times for many governments, cities and counties. And I think the most telling service delivery measure is general fund expenses. And you can see the distribution between Camden County, the three cities, Camden County's countywide general fund expenses are $32.9 million or 59% share. And you can see how the other cities stack up. Short-term and long-term debt is number 4. Again, we look at one consideration should be and has been in the past when Camden County and the cities have renegotiated lost is what is the current distribution? And so the courts often have considered the current distribution as one point to consider. Point of sale. This, as I said earlier, we're cross-referencing the Department of Revenue sales tax commodities report, which lists the sales tax collected by groupings of business types. And the U.S. Census, in its economic survey that comes out once every 5 years, compares sales and employment and payroll for all businesses in your community using that same set of numbers, using the what we used to call SIC codes or the NIACS codes, which identify business types. In the case where we don't have full data from the Census Bureau to match up with all of the Revenue Department data to complete the picture, we use Commercial and Industrial Tax Digest to fill in any blanks that there might be. And the Commercial and Industrial Tax Digest correlates like 97% with these sales tax numbers. So it's a very strong correlation. We get U.S. Census information through the economic survey for Camden County, Kingsland, and St. Mary's. Woodbine and any other city that's under 2,500 isn't included in those data sets. And so we substitute Commercial and Industrial Tax Digest, which, as I say, is a very strong correlation. And that's what the analysis looks like when you put it all together. There's a list of all the NAICS codes, the types of businesses that you can match sales information along with the commodities report, which shows the collection by industry and by commodity. and you multiply that through to get a distribution between Camden County, Kingsland, and St. Mary's. And then we use the tax digest for industrial and commercial to calculate the Woodbine share, which comes out of the county share. So at the bottom, you see the proportional distribution of 56.8 versus 22 versus 20. Intergovernmental agreements is criteria number 6, and that's really handled best under LOST. These 8 factors were developed in 1994, as I said, and then implemented in 1995. And that preceded the SDS law, which came out in 1999. And so, as you all know, it's best to deal with intergovernmental agreements through that process rather than this. Tax equity is an issue that is important consideration for you all. $28.9 million, almost $29 million of collections from the county are through property tax and lost. Their unincorporated revenue from a myriad of unincorporated types of revenue is 2.9 million, and there's another 630,000 from special service tax districts. So combined, the county has about $3.5 million worth of unincorporated revenue that is more than enough to fund their unincorporated services. And so property tax and lost can be used to fund county-wide services. Again, we want to emphasize the fact that we are using and need to use in fairness to all the taxpayers, countywide numbers. The last criteria is number 8. This is, we're using the general fund expenses and population together. It's an excellent measure of the service delivery demands that are placed on each of the governments. And you can see the way that distribution breaks down there. In our analysis, we try to make sure that we're covering the 4 corners of the law, not looking at just 1 or 2 select items to be our guide, but to look at the overall purpose of the law, which is to provide a property tax rollback in a fair and equitable manner for all the taxpayers. And then we look at each one of the measurable criteria, which again, daytime population, residential population, general fund expenses, our current loss distribution, sales tax, and the proportion of the cost of services is per resident. So we believe that this combination data sets accounts for the service delivery responsibilities of Camden County. And there you can see we add all those measurement points up, and you can see the distribution at the bottom of that slide. As far as your schedule is concerned, this begins your 60-day negotiating period. If a resolution isn't arrived at the end of this 60 days, then the governments would need to select a mediator, and then you go through a mediation process. But in the end, we have to have a decision by December 30th, 2022, and a new lost certificate turned into the Revenue Department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Let's give you guys something to work from, work with, work about. I realize y'all are all gonna need some time to digest. That was the whole purpose of starting this off. We'll give you our presentation, and we'll start with, we'll set up another meeting to start getting into the weeds a little bit. So, does anyone have any, keeping in mind, go back to that, schedule, so. You turn it off?
Yes.
Yes, the last page. Yeah, last page of it.
The next last page.
It's page 13.
Continue on, two more. One more. There you go.
All right. And obviously, once this came about, we had to start this process for the end of June. Everybody's aware of that. Which starts off the 60-day period starts on June the 15th. So we've got August 15th. To come to an agreement, go to mediation or whatever. So the next thing I think we need to do is schedule a meeting in July, when everybody has had an opportunity to review and prepare their own. So, does anybody have any thoughts as to when the cities that they might be, everyone prepared to come back and start negotiation?
I had a question actually for Mr. Sutton. Slide 18. Can you express, it seems like you got a correlation factor of R.97. I don't know if that's a one-tail, two-tail test around that, but can you explain to me, increased service demands, bullet number 2, how the county,
Which one are you looking at?
bullet number 2, increased service demands? Can you explain how that correlates to the city of Kingsland and the revenue generated via point of sale to the city of Kingsland?
Okay, well, just making the point that, point of sale is a consideration in the lost law because it does have an effect. It can have an effect on the amount of services provided by governments in the
Can,
commercial aid.
can.
Can have an effect on the amount of
May.
services provided
It does,
by
right?
local governments especially in the commercial areas.
Can you send us your data that you used for your analysis?
Please.
Because I see a lot of numbers that I've never seen before, and I know our departments, I don't think we've seen these numbers before. Quite frankly, I'm trying to understand how we arrived, or how you arrived at those numbers. I know there's a formula that you use, but I'd like to see it and run it through our departments. Because we all know statistics, you can make them say anything. That's your specialty. Doesn't take much to adjust them, change them, and I just,
The
bullet
summary
number 2.
the summary I've included in your documents there, where we bring together this page
Well,
where
How did you get to the weighting? That's what I was also seeing.
the weighting.
How did you weight? It's not weighted?
It's not weighted in any way. No. There's no weighting.
The source of this data is basically the census. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
So where does the census define the increased service demands placed upon the county or the individual cities?
The census isn't doing, the census is simply measuring its point of sale.
So where did that come from?
Point of sale comes from,
No,
He's
not
talking
point of
about the
sale, the
increased
increased service demand. Where do we get those?
I mean, that's a concept that I presume,
Okay.
that we're presuming that it increase that.
We can't,
The
we can't
reason,
run cities
the
off of
reason
themselves.
the legislature might put point of sale
May.
into this law is to try to account for the increased service demand.
Right, but
that
it
a point of
defines
sale might,
in the
Yeah,
option, local option sale, tax, it defines that they try not to, get too wordy as far as how they define the way we use those different criteria. In fact, it says it avoids within the legislation any defined way in which we use that criteria. Instead
right, so we've
to
got to
cities
come up with
and
but in the end, we have to come up with a way to measure each of these
We do,
criteria.
we do.
We all do, right, exactly.
I think the problem that I'm struggling with here is, and if you're a consultant, you've probably heard this expression before. All models are wrong. Some are useful. I don't know how to judge the usefulness of these models. sitting here. So now we have a tremendous amount of work to try and figure out the usefulness of these models. They are models. They are wrong. They might be useful.
I'd be happy to go over with whoever you want me to go over it with, to show you how that calculation's done in a small group meeting, if that's what you choose to do.
Well, I think,
This is census information that's readily available through the census website, and
Right, yeah.
and all of your finance directors have the commodities report from the revenue department, and both use the same NAICS codes. And I've just simply cross-referenced it on that chart to show how using those two data sources, you can reference them and get a good indication of what the sales tax generation is. by
Mayor,
jurisdiction.
I know you mentioned increased service demands too, and I know we've been talking probably the last couple of years now about a new jail facility. That's something that's definitely gonna have an increased demand as far as cost dollars for the county. I know we've talked about it internally. We're trying to work with the sheriff to secure a location and funding opportunities for that facility, but that's a significant investment. Potentially upwards of 40 million. There's a county up in North Carolina that just approved a 350 bed facility for 42 million. That's about the size that we would probably need, 300 to 350 beds. I think right now we're about 150.
Well, loss can't be the answer to that.
No, I'm not saying that it would be. I'm just saying, you're talking about increased service demands. I mean, that's something that we potentially look at as far as an increased service demand for us.
that affects countywide.
As well as the city of Woodburn.
Right.
What's the census saying about their confidence limits on the 2020 census data?
I don't know what they're saying their confidence level is.
Well, I know there's been a lot of discussion. I've read a lot about, there's been significant overcounts, there's significant undercounts. The African-American community has been significantly undercounted.
I certainly know that there's certainly been a lot of discussion about that, but census is what the law says we're supposed to use. And that's the best data that's available out there.
Well, a lot of this,
Certainly might not be perfect.
this is not census data.
Pardon me?
Say a lot of this is not census data.
Well, the sales tax, what I'm using for sales tax is census data, revenue department, and matching the revenue department data and filling in any gaps with commercial and industrial digest. So all those data sources are readily available, provable, and reliable.
Can you send that to us?
Can we send it to all, please?
Yeah, just send
What
it.
we'll do, anything he sends out, he'll send to everybody.
That's not gonna move, please.
Can you not send it to us?
Sure.
I don't think anybody's having an issue with understanding that this is based in general, the census numbers. What I think we have is the criteria that we have an issue with how the criteria interacts with population via the census. And I can't get a clear understanding on how we reached these criteria. And this is just one slide, but on multiple slides. So I'd like a better understanding of that.
Well, I think, everybody's gonna take their time, go back through it, look at it. They're gonna all come up with questions. And probably the best thing to do is just set up a group email. It'll blow up everybody's emails, but mine's blown up anyway. So someone's asking a question and getting a response, and everybody gets the benefit of that question and response. So there's not something being told to Woodbine that's not being told to St. Mary's that needs to be told to Kingston. So everybody's dealing with the same facts. And like I said, this is the start. We realize that, there's gonna be questions, and we realize we're deviating, as he pointed out, that there's going to be some deviations, and historically, where you just say, okay, population, and I know everybody wants to look at just the population model, and it may work for other items, but the loss negotiations are a little different when it comes to the countywide services that it relates to, because everybody in the county is, are residents of the county, even the ones in Kingsland, Woodbine, and St. Mary's. And we're not going, can't just consider the unincorporated populations for using this.
That's correct, and they all pay county taxes as well.
Exactly, and they all should, and that was the point he was making earlier in one of his slides, is that they all should benefit equally, equitably on how it comes out. And it's just been disproportionate for a long time. We've had, increased services, everybody's had increases. We realize that, but those services that the county provide, most county services, we can sit here and itemize them, but y'all know the things that y'all don't do that we do. And, it's not going to be any one particular method over another, but I think you just have to look, and we have to come up with a combination of these things that makes it a little more equitable. So why don't we, everybody look at it, and we'll start with the questions and comments and, folks with emails.
Can I ask, because we went around and asked the cities what our expectation was. We got a huge presentation of different various standpoints that the county could take. So what is the standpoint that the county's taking?
Oh, the proposed,
Which is,
it's on your handout on, page 12.
let's see that, please. Okay, so that's what the county's proposed.
So Gary, given the tight timeline of 60 days, I would think that we need to be regrouped within 2 weeks
Yeah,
to
that's
start.
fine.
And it may be that we can do every 2 weeks, or maybe we got to be more often, or depending on the status.
Just depends on how
Because,
things flowing, we'll try to get something within 2 weeks. I know everybody's schedules. I realize it's summertime. I realize a lot of things are happening. Everybody, we're in our budget process as well. It's a busy time for everybody. I guess that's one of the reasons it only happens every
well,
10 years.
let me distill this from the city of St. Mary's standpoint. It's really my viewpoint. But we're sitting at the table where basically the negotiating positions are 0% and 58.1%. And currently you're at 46%. Your presentation's going to strip out $1 million from Kingsland and St. Mary's. So we have a lot to discuss. And I've distilled it into the simplest measures possible. Appreciate all the hard work. But when it goes to the strategic understanding of what's at stake, that's what's at stake. $1 million. And that's only 1 year, times 10. And it doesn't mean that the sales numbers, which I'm really concerned about, is that the last 2 years have been abnormal. We've usually bumped around 2 million for since '06? Something like that. So the numbers are very different. I don't know if it's COVID related or why the numbers got so high. It'll be interesting if we could analyze how that happened, where it came from. It would be good for all of us to know that. But I'm telling you, the spread for discussion is big. And so the sooner we get started, the better.
So the impact of this proposal on Woodbine would be a 7 or 8 mil tax increase
Yes.
on the poorest communities in the county.
Yeah.
That's the impact of your proposal, a 7 or 8 mil tax increase on the citizens of
We gotta
Woodbine.
find it, $800,000.
And you're going from 3% to 1.4%.
So clearly our proposal won't be along those lines.
You understand, there's gonna be, like I said, it's a starting point. And, let's just agree to meet back in, what, 2 weeks?
That is, I think, the 4th of July week, but we've got 4 days at the end of the week.
Oh, hang on, let's,
And that, the concern is everybody, we're gonna run into holiday problems with vacations.
well, next week is the beginning of the 4th. The week after is right after the 4th. Pick your poisons. The what now? What day were you saying?
We have a board meeting.
The 12th of what? July?
That would be 2 weeks.
Is the 12th on our meeting day?
Yes. No, we're meeting on the 19th.
The 19th?
Oh, we meet the 19th of July.
Any day that week.
On the 12th?
No, our meeting's on the 19th.
Okay, so it's not the 12th.
So I'm saying that would be open to the 11th or the 15th.
Yeah.
We're good.
Which one you do?
12 is fine.
12?
That should work.
All right. We'll come back. Everybody's better armed.
The 12th of July is when they want them.
And we'll,
What time do you want to do that, Gary? Yeah, like 3:30?
3:30 okay with everybody? Everybody want to do it earlier or later? I'm flexible in that regard. You have a preference, Mayor?
This 3:30 is fine with me, but
3:30 okay with everybody? So 3:30 on the 12th.
The other company, I'm not sure what thing I'm getting.
We'll send out, like I said, Katie will send out everything, reminders, calendars, and, we'll get back together. Otherwise, appreciate everybody showing up.
thank you.